Tomo Aizawa was a hot mess. She tried to confess her love to her clueless childhood friend, Junichiro Kubota, but it blew up in her face. The guy didn't even take her seriously. Frustrated, she went to her bestie Misuzu Gundu for some advice. Misuzu, being her usual sly self, suggested Tomo change how she talks to Junichiro. Big mistake. Instead of making things better, they ended up arguing like a couple of idiots. Fast forward to a rainy day, both Junichiro and Misuzu forget their umbrellas like the geniuses they are. They hang around waiting for Tomo to rescue them. Misuzu, never missing a chance to stir shit up, teases Junichiro, and he shoves her into the rain. Hell of a move. Then, at Misuzu's sneaky suggestion, Tomo and Junichiro head home together. It gets awkward real fast when Junichiro tries to keep Tomo from getting drenched. Tomo freaks out and bolts, only for him to do the same after accidentally spotting her soaked clothes. Later, Tomo joins the boys' karate club because why the hell not? The club's captain, Kosuka Misaki, is starstruck by her badass moves. When she asks for advice, Kosuka, all flustered and weird, blurts out that she's perfect the way she is. Meanwhile, two girls, Mifune and Ogawa, try to hit on Kosuka after school. But when they see him hanging out with Tomo, they flip. They approach Tomo, who, being her usual crazy self, thinks they want to fight. Misuzu clears up the misunderstanding and they meet behind the gym. The two scaredy cats admit they have a thing for Kosuka. Tomo, hyped up like a lunatic, promises to help them out. Things took a dark turn when some old creep on the bus groped Tomo. Junichiro wasn't having it and quickly restrained the bastard. But instead of comforting her, he hit her with some dumbass suggestion about wearing slacks instead of skirts. Tomo was pissed and vented to Misuzu, who, being the evil mastermind she is, decided to mess with her. After school, Misuzu snagged Tomo's shorts, forcing her to walk home with Junichiro in nothing but her skirt. Tomo was a total wreck, feeling way too exposed while Junichiro looked like he was trying not to implode. By the next day, Misuzu, always 3 steps ahead, figured out from Tomo's flustered reaction that Junichiro was finally starting to see her as more than just one of the guys. Enter Carol Olston, the blonde airhead who's a magnet for boys. She runs into Tomo and Kosuka in the hallway and immediately decides Tomo's her new rival. Misuzu, ever the chaos queen, sends Carol off to Junichiro, which somehow lights a fire under Tomo to chase after him. Meanwhile, Junichiro, clueless as ever, thinks Carol just wants to train to take on some random rival and agrees to help her with basic exercises. When Tomo finally tracks Junichiro down, Carol pieces out without a word. Later, Misuzu drags Carol to a pastry shop and convinces her to buddy up with Tomo. The next day, Tomo shocks everyone by accepting Carol's friendship without hesitation. Just as Tomo thought her life couldn't get more confusing, Junichiro casually drops the bomb that he dated Misuzu back in middle school. What the actual hell? Tomo was fuming when she confronted Misuzu about the whole dated Junichiro revelation. Misuzu, unbothered as ever, casually dropped the truth. It lasted a pathetic 3 days. Tomo was pissed but low-key relieved when Junichiro later admitted he wasn't into anyone at the moment. The next day, Junichiro bumped into Kosuka, who he immediately treated like shit because he realized Kosuka was Tomo's karate senpai. The jealousy was real and Junichiro made sure Kosuka felt it. Things got awkward on the bus later when Kosuka figured out Junichiro, despite his rough attitude, actually admired Tomo like crazy. But the moment Kosuka tried to tell Tomo about it the next day, Junichiro was back to his intimidating bullshit, shutting him down hard. Meanwhile, Misuzu had another scheme brewing. She suggested Tomo take Junichiro on a date, and to her surprise, he agreed with way too much excitement. Cue the chaos. Misuzu and Carol teamed up to help Tomo pick out some killer clothes. Tomo showed up the next day looking like a whole new person. Their date was classic Tomo and Junichiro, batting cages, bowling, and a little awkward fun. But when she worked up the nerve to take him to karaoke, she chickened out and ended up singing kids' songs like some kind of maniac. The next day, Tomo was dying of embarrassment, trying to stop Misuzu and Carol from getting their hands on the video. Meanwhile, Junichiro noticed something different about her and couldn't quite figure it out. To blow off some steam, Tomo dragged the girls back to karaoke for round 2. Tatsumi was on a mission to make Misuzu crack a smile, but she shut him down at every turn like the ice queen she is. Meanwhile, Tomo decided it was time to act all playful and girly, so she started hugging random girls in class. Misuzu, who's normally too cool to care, started getting salty when Carol got all clingy with Tomo. It wasn't long before Tomo tried pulling the same stunt on Junichiro, but he just rolled his eyes and called her childish. Later, Junichiro stopped by Tomo's house and got a glimpse of her chaotic family life. Over lunch with Misuzu, Carol handed Tomo her headband, acting all sweet, while Kosuka showed up out of nowhere to nudge Misuzu into sticking it out as Carol's friend. After school, Mifune and Ogawa begged Tomo for help dealing with some creepy senior who wouldn't leave them alone. Tomo didn't waste time and sent the guy flying across the yard with one well-placed kick. Of course, the dude didn't take it well and started plotting his revenge, but Junichiro overheard his plans. Not one to mess around, Junichiro found the senior and his goons, beat the hell out of them, and made them all grovel and apologize to Tomo the next time they crossed paths. Junichiro might be clueless, but when it comes to protecting Tomo, he doesn't play games. Carol invited Tomo and Misuzu over to her place and holy hell, it turned out to be a literal mansion with a front yard so big you'd need GPS to navigate it. Carol's mom, Ferris, was just as ditzy as her daughter but had her radar up about Misuzu's intentions. The night got even weirder when Carol casually destroyed both Tomo and Misuzu at Othello like it was nothing. With midterms looming, Misuzu decided to host a study session at her house. Carol and Tomo showed up and Misuzu's mom, Misaki, made her debut, basically Misuzu's twin but older. She even mistook Tomo for her mom Akemi, which was awkward as hell. While studying, Tomo actually managed to understand Carol's bizarre explanations better than Misuzu's meticulous methods. After exams wrapped up, Tomo and Junichiro showed some slight improvement in their scores. Meanwhile, Carol couldn't resist roasting Misuzu for landing second place, flexing her way to the top spot like a smug queen. Things took a turn when Junichiro asked Tomo to come over to his house for some gaming. The realization hit Tomo like a truck. Staying overnight at a guy's place? Alone? The panic was real, but everyone from Misuzu to Carol to her own parents was like, go for it. Throughout the night, Tomo wrestled with her new mushy feelings for Junichiro, trying to figure out where their friendship stood. By the next day though she couldn't deny it, they felt closer and maybe this whole crush thing wasn't as terrifying as she thought. Tomo's birthday kicked off with her friends handing her a mix of gifts, some cool and some downright crazy. Misuzu and Carol weren't about to stop there though. They hauled her to Misuzu's house and gave her a makeover so over the top it felt like they were prepping her for some weird pageant. When they were done, they shoved her out to grab ice cream from the local convenience store while she looked like a dolled-up stranger. Tomo felt like shit walking into the store, all self-conscious and awkward. To make things worse, who does she run into but Junichiro? Of course the universe had to screw with her even more. As she bolted out, her stupid heeled shoes decided to betray her, and she face-planted like a total loser. Junichiro, clueless as ever, helped her up and walked her to a nearby park. The guy didn't even realize it was her, even when she tossed out hints about their bond. It was almost impressive how dense he was. Eventually, Tomo made it back to Misuzu's place, only to find out those two sneaky little devils had set up a surprise birthday party for her. It was annoying but hell it was sweet too. Not long after, Tomo started training for the school dodgeball tournament. She was so ridiculously strong they threw her on the boys' team with Junichiro. Together they tore through every team like it was nothing, smashing their way to the finals. There they faced a beast of a judo guy named Goma. That dude was built like a gorilla, but Tomo and Junichiro flattened him and took the trophy. After the match, Junichiro couldn't help but think about how much he admired her. Junichiro's mind drifted back to the day his quiet life got flipped upside down. His family had just moved into town from Tokyo, and he was perfectly fine being a loner, glued to his video games. Then came Tomo vaulting over the damn wall like a crazy kid, yelling at her new neighbor to come out. She snatched up his handheld console like it was hers to play with and, bam, snapped the thing clean in half. Junichiro thought his world had ended. Tomo's parents dragged her over to apologize, and they even got him a replacement. But life wasn't done messing with him. Some bullies snatched the new console, and Junichiro was too much of a loser to do anything about it. Enter Tomo, fists blazing. She beat the hell out of those guys and handed him the handheld back. But Junichiro, trying to keep some shred of pride, told her to hold on to it until he was strong enough to earn it back. Years later, Tomo still has it, casually playing like it's no big deal. She wonders when the hell Junichiro's going to step up and take it back. Later, Tomo and the gang hit the beach and she shows up in a swimsuit, trying to nudge her way closer to Junichiro. But the guy can't bring himself to see them as a couple, even after he fends off some sleazebag who's all over her. Misuzu, always scheming, tells Tomo to stick close to him and make her moves. On the train ride home, Misuzu smugly thinks her little plan is working. Misuzu had dared Tomo to ask Junichiro to the fireworks festival. Nervous as hell, Tomo had somehow managed to ask him and he had agreed, clueless as ever. Meanwhile, Misuzu, Carol and Kosuka had been doing their own thing, while Tomo had gone full beast mode at a shooting game, winning every damn prize. The operator had freaked out and sent her picture to all the stall managers, making her totally unrecognizable in her yukata. Junichiro had taken her to a secret spot to watch the fireworks, and Tomo had almost confessed again, but Junichiro had been too clueless to get it, thinking she had just been joking before. Then the gang had targeted Misuzu to get back at Tomo. Her terrifying, demonic aura had freaked them out at first, but she had thrown Carol under the bus, claiming they weren't friends to keep her safe. Carol, pissed off and done with their shit, had tossed their gang leader and chaos had erupted. While hiding out, Misuzu had called Junichiro with Tomo trailing behind like a good little sidekick. They had eventually kicked the gang's asses, and Misuzu had owed Carol an apology. Kosuka, as usual, had been a step behind. He had shown up just in time to see Carol changing and, of course, had totally misread the whole situation. To wrap things up, Misuzu had blackmailed the gang into becoming their bodyguards after they'd learned Tomo was Goro's daughter. The next day, Junichiro had walked to school holding Tomo's hand, making her feel like the luckiest girl alive, even though it was the smallest thing ever. A flashback revealed the moment Kosuka first met Carol, and it had been game over for him from that point. He'd become completely smitten, his heart on fire for her ever since. Fast forward to the present, and Kosuka had joined Goro's dojo, but he was way in over his head, drowning in the intense training. When Tomo had asked him why the hell he'd signed up, he'd admitted that he just wanted to get stronger, strong enough for Carol. The next day, Carol had gotten it all wrong, thinking Kosuka was into Tomo. So, she decided to stir the pot and went into Junichiro's house to mess with him, trying to make Kosuka jealous. Of course it worked like a charm. Kosuka, fed up and heart-pounding, finally spilled the beans to Misuzu. He confessed that he couldn't bring himself to tell Carol he loved her because he'd never seen her vulnerable, like the real her. To push him forward, Misuzu had dropped some harsh words about his feelings for Carol, making her run out of the school in tears. Realizing she had messed up, Misuzu quickly sent Kosuka to Carol's house, hoping to set things straight. At Carol's place, Kosuka had laid it all out, telling her about Misuzu's lie, and finally, after what felt like forever, he confessed his love. Carol, completely surprised and elated, had gladly accepted his confession. Her mom, watching the whole thing, had trusted Carol to him, knowing he'd keep her true to herself, promising not to change her now that she had friends. The next day, Carol had gotten her revenge on Misuzu in the most Carol-like way, scaring the hell out of her. Tomo and Junichiro were totally pumped for their school's marathon. The two of them breezed past everyone else in their class, making it look like a walk in the park. But on the way back, Tomo totally wiped out from exhaustion. Turns out she'd been running her ass off the night before too. No wonder she hit the wall. Junichiro, like the total gentleman he is, carried her piggyback all the way to the school nurse. Misuzu, with her usual scheming ways, suggested that Tomo should use this as a chance to look more vulnerable and win some sympathy points with Junichiro. Typical Misuzu. Tomo, not really buying into the whole vulnerability act, finally convinced Junichiro to carry her again so her mom could drive her to the hospital. When Junichiro came to visit her later, Tomo handed him back the handheld from years ago. She said it was because he'd finally caught up to her in physical strength. Junichiro felt a little surprised, but there was a strange warmth between them. Then his mind drifted back to middle school. He thought about all the crazy stuff that went down between him, Tomo, and Misuzu back then. He remembered the awkwardness, the tension, and the friendship that had slowly but surely turned into something more complicated. Tomo landed a part-time gig at a ramen shop owned by Tatsumi's family, with Misuzu working as a waitress and Carol playing the role of the goofy mascot. The day was going pretty smoothly until, out of nowhere, Junichiro strolled in. Both Tomo and Misuzu froze, but Junichiro's casual compliments had Tomo feeling on top of the world. By the end of the weekend, all three girls got some extra cash for their hard work, and Tomo, with her new winnings, decided to buy Junichiro a birthday present along with some cake. Junichiro, of course, suggested they eat it at her place. Tomo, being Tomo, wasn't going to sit around and wait for things to magically happen with Junichiro. So, she went straight to Misuzu for advice on how to get closer to him. Misuzu, always the schemer, came up with an ingenious plan to push Junichiro down the stairs and have Tomo saved him. Of course, Junichiro, being way too quick for that nonsense, dodged last second and ended up stumbling right into Carol instead. Misuzu, feeling a bit guilty for messing with the situation, started skipping school, taking multiple sick days. Tomo, deciding it was time to take matters into her own hands, made the move to visit Misuzu at home, bringing along a copy of the script for their class play, Cinderella. Misuzu, clearly not too thrilled with the situation, showed up the next day pissed off because Carol had cast her as the lead without asking. Meanwhile, Tomo was cast as the prince, Carol as the evil stepmother, and Junichiro? He was a tree. During the school play, Misuzu had a blast, especially since it gave her a chance to get closer to Tomo. After the festival, Junichiro and Tomo shared a quiet moment by the bonfire, dancing together. He dropped some heavy hints that he liked her, but of course Tomo, being Tomo, freaked out and ran off. Over the next few days they hung out like normal, but she couldn't stop getting all flustered every time he brought it up again. At school, Junichiro finally confessed to Kosuke, spilling the beans about his feelings for Tomo. Kosuke, ever the wingman, pushed him to confess already. Before doing that, Junichiro called Misuzu over to apologize for everything, but she turned it into some weird pep talk, cheering him on instead. She even lied, saying she'd never been in love before. After that little chat, Junichiro dragged Tomo to the roof and, without missing a beat, repeated his feelings for her. Tomo? Well, she didn't hold back. She punched him right in the face, pissed that he hadn't noticed all the effort she put in to get closer to him. But Junichiro, being his usual cool, calm self, didn't flinch. That made Tomo even more embarrassed, so she ran off again. Confused and overwhelmed, Tomo went to Misuzu and Carol for advice. Misuzu, now in full emotional support mode, told Tomo through her tears that she had to go for it, especially since she knew the feelings were mutual. So Tomo did it. She marched up to Junichiro and, on the temple staircase, finally accepted his confession. Junichiro's face lit up with joy when she assured him they'd stay as close as they were before. Victory at last. Misuzu and Carol, being the mischievous besties they are, pushed Tomo to invite Junichiro to a romantic movie on Christmas. They thought it would get him flustered. They watched the movie, but the couple in the film went way beyond just kissing, leaving Tomo blushing like crazy. After the movie, they exchanged Christmas presents, but Tomo wasn't done yet. She invited herself to Junichiro's place, hoping to make a move, but things got super awkward fast. After a long silence, Tomo couldn't take it anymore. She snapped at Junichiro, telling him straight up that she came to kiss him. But Junichiro, being all serious, explained that he couldn't just do that. He told her he'd asked her parents for their blessing, but they made it clear that he could only date her if he defeated Goro. After New Year's Day, school was back in session, and Misuzu and Carol cornered Tomo, accusing her of ignoring them. Tomo finally spilled the beans about what had happened, making them realize how complicated things had gotten. Meanwhile, Junichiro had already challenged Goro to a fight. Tomo, during karate training, suddenly realized that Junichiro needed her support. So, like a bullet, she rushed to his side. When she arrived, Junichiro, injured but fired up by seeing her, found the strength to land a solid punch on Goro, breaking his nose and securing the victory. After the match, Junichiro asked Tomo to be his girlfriend for real this time. Tomo, full of joy, kissed him, sealing the deal.